Do you want to know what makes the Stevie Churchill cranks so strong and so light? Today we're going to do and explain a review on the Stevie Churchill signature Primo cranks. Like always, we're going to tell you how you guys can win a bunch of free parts from our bike shop and maybe a free bike, so hang tight and we'll tell you all the rules and regulations later on in this video. We're also going to tell you where you can buy these cranks, and we're going to tell you all the ins and outs and what makes these cranks strong, what makes them light, and what makes them add a little bit better value than a lot of the other cranks. So yeah, let's first off, if you know who Stevie Churchill is, he's a young gentleman that's been pretty much slaying the streets and skate parks all over the world, and he just continues to come with heavy moves, and he's just got a super dope style that all of us love. But he got the chance to make some signature cranks with Primo, and I think it was definitely a cool move on their part. But these have been one of our best selling cranks, and there's a lot of reasons why. So I'll kind of tell you a little bit about them. So I think the biggest part about these cranks is that it comes with a different size spindle. A lot of people are wondering, hey, what's the difference between a 19 millimeter spindle, a 22 millimeter spindle, or a 24 millimeter spindle? And there's a lot of big differences from those, and why one's stronger than the other and why one's lighter. Let's first off, I opened the box and I noticed that it's got a pretty large spindle in here. So if you look at this thing's super big, but it's also hollow. Originally, cranks were designed with a 19 millimeter spindle. It comes on a lot of stock bikes. Majority of the stock bikes come with a 19 millimeter spindle. So if you're trying to upgrade cranks and stuff like that, you're gonna need a bottom bracket as well, because the original ones are smaller. A lot of the stock bikes usually take like an OEM part that's made in Taiwan or China or somewhere overseas, and they just mass produce them and they create a cost-effective BMX bike. And that's why the price is really low on the stock bikes, because they kind of pick stuff out of a catalog and they go, hey, you know what, I want these cranks, but put my logo on it, or don't even put a logo on it, we want to cut the cost even more. So that's why the brands do that, and that's how you guys get these bikes so cheap. So the bikes that you guys get now are completely, far better than what we rode when we were riding back in the day. When I started off riding in about 1995, 96, there was a lot of one-piece cranks that came on stock bikes. If you got a three-piece cranks, it was like a higher-end bike, so it was about $600. And that one ended up coming with like sealed cranks, not even sealed headset, but the lower end bikes are one-piece cranks, unsealed everything. There was a lot of steel on the bikes, including the actual rims. So we were spending about $200 on a bike, and we're practically getting nothing. Now the price has gone a little bit up, but I couldn't get a bike with a three-piece crank at $300. So what you guys are getting are really awesome bikes for the price. So don't take that for granted. Realize that you're starting out, you're getting a lot more bang for your buck on these completes. But even on those completes, those cranks aren't gonna hold up because the technology has gotten far better. It's kind of like buying an iPhone when they first came out. The camera wasn't so good. They didn't have, Bluetooth. They didn't have a lot of other features that these cameras have, like HD and stuff like that. But now you can buy a camera or a phone, and the camera has HD on it. It has 4K, and it's pretty much, you're getting a lot more for your money rather than, the cameras that were out a long time ago. So the same thing goes with the bikes and the cranks and stuff like that. So the technology is getting better, and the cost is, going down extremely. And a lot of people know that in the electronic world. And with the BMX, I noticed a lot of you guys, you kind of complain and you come up with all these excuses when it's really cool that you can get it that cheap and that it's not very expensive. It's quite frankly, I would think it's underpriced. There's a lot of other industries that are around that sell similar products like this spindle for your car or something like that, but the price is dramatically more expensive than this actual piece on this bicycle. So comparing apples to apples, bicycles are very, very cheap for what you're getting. And this is kind of a cool invention, and it's kind of a new thing. So let's talk about the spindles. So originally, 19 millimeter spindle is what profile cranks used to come with, and that was kind of the norm. They kind of use a spline drive because it was out of a car, and it's actually what your steering wheel slams onto, and it locks it in place. So that original size is kind of taken over, and it's been like the norm, but that's like on a stock bike. And over the years, BMX has just gotten crazier and crazier. So what happens is that they end up jumping and stuff, or bailing, or landing flat, and that 7/8 spindle is just a smaller tube, so it would end up bending. So once that thing bends, or the crank arms aren't big enough to support that much force, something gives. So long story short is, as you go bigger in size, it creates the spindle to be a lot stronger. It's a known fact that a solid bar of metal is a lot weaker than actual having a tube. That's because the molecules in the actual material, it is easier to transfer heat and to transfer that energy. So a solid bar like this will bend easier than having a solid tube like a straw. So if you've seen straws, they're a lot lighter, but they're a lot harder to break when you're pushing down on them because they're hollow. If it was a solid tube made out of the same material, it would bend much easier, similar to a noodle. So what they did with these cranks is they've actually put a 24 millimeter spindle on it. Now you're wondering what's the different sizes. So 19 is smaller, 22 is a little bit bigger, and then there's 24 millimeter. So this is the biggest spindle out of all the bicycle cranks, and I think it's a pretty cool idea because we've been trying to figure out how to make your sprocket sit on the spindle perfectly circle. Because you notice that you get a lot of chain slack and or loose spot is what a lot of people call it. Like, oh, I got a loose spot on my chain. That's because they use a different hat washer inside the sprocket, and then that's supposed to take up the space for whichever size spindle that you have. Now, when you talk about trying to make things perfect, it's not always perfect. So when there's a hat washer and you got a hole of your sprocket there, that thing's gonna slide on there, but it's not gonna be always perfect. Now, that including as well as a spindle going in there, that's not gonna be perfect as well. So now what you're doing is you're doubling up that little gap to make it slide on there very easily. So it creates a lot of play, and when you step down on your crank, you normally have like a foot forward that you ride with. So when you push your front foot forward down, what it's gonna do is that's your normal side where you're putting all the pressure. Your left foot's not gonna put as much force in it, so what you're actually doing is you're putting a lot more force on your chain and your sprocket on that one side drive that you really, really crank it down. And what it's actually doing is instead of it being circle, it's actually pulling it to one side. And eventually that wears and wears and wears and wears, and then it creates your chain to be it allows your sprocket not to be perfectly in the center. So after it's not in the center, it also wears the gears a little bit more there on that side, and then also it stretches that perfect spot on your chain. Now you're gonna say, hey, you know what, the chain goes around and around and around, and it slowly moves and it moves and it moves, and it's eventually it works its all the way out. No, it doesn't. The chain actually always rides on a certain spot in your sprocket, and you can definitely see that when you're spinning it. You can see that tight loose spot. This size spindle is actually kind of, got rid of that size or anything like that, or that play. So I think that's very cool. But before I talk a little bit more about that, let's talk about the 22 millimeter spindle. So the 22 is a little bit smaller, but that also has a washer on there, and that's kind of the norm of the heavier duty cranks. The reason why they did the 22 is because a lot of the older style cranks or the stock cranks, the spindle would break, but even if you made it out of good quality material, the spindle wouldn't break. What it would actually do is it would actually twist. And I speak from experience. I've been running, 3-piece cranks for over 15 years, and the number one part that I would break is the cranks and the wheels. But a lot of the cranks, I would have problems because I would bend the spindle or twist it, and you could actually see the splines on here. They would actually be straight and then have a little curve right here, and then go straight again where the crank arm was on it. And that's from torquing it. And basically they would get hot, and then it would twist the little splines on there. So you got to realize that when you're riding, the number one thing that takes the abuse is your cranks. It's like you're like a cat on a BMX bike, and you're jumping off of all kinds of crazy stuff, out of the quarter pipes, out of, off of walls, you name it, out of rails, going up rails, doing bar spins and landing. And what do? You usually put your feet down pretty hard, and your hands are just keeping you to steer because you're obviously pretty good at riding bikes. But your cranks are the ones taking the beating on it. So they're pretty much crowbars that you're standing on, and you're sitting there slamming on these cranks. So it's gonna eventually bend and break. So you want something bigger and heavy duty. Pretty much. That's kind of what your cranks are dealing with. So when you're thinking about a part and stuff like that, you want the best quality parts, but at the same time, you got to realize that you're doing a lot of abuse to these things. So if you're doing a lot of abuse to these things, don't be that guy that complains that, hey, my crank's broke and blah blah blah. I only rode it for this long. Dude, I bought a $110 spindle. Literally rode it for 3 hours, and I broke the spindle. $110 gone instantly. And that wasn't because it was manufactured wrong or that it was put on wrong. Like, I put it on properly and it was manufactured properly, but I did a wall ride and I landed perfect. I can't explain to you how perfect I landed, but I landed off the wall ride, but I jumped out and I landed flat and on the bank, just perfectly dead stop, and it just snapped it instantly. It jacked up my sprocket, it ripped my pants, and it literally just broke instantly. That's because I just didn't do the trick right. So try not to blame a lot of these guys that are building this stuff. They do a fabulous job of making these parts super, super strong. And if you make a mistake, be honest with them, tell them what's up. Hey, I accidentally landed on this wrong. Is there anything you can help me out with? They love that because they want to see guys like you out there shredding and actually putting their stuff to use, and knowing that, hey, he made a mistake. Hey, he's a good guy. Let's hook him up. And that's where it kind of goes a little bit longer. But with that said, is those things would break, and they would make a bigger size, which is a 22 millimeter, made it a little bit bigger to sustain that. But the problem with the 22 millimeter is that it's a little bit bigger, but it left a little bit of room to bore it out. Now, when they'd bore it out or anything like that, now what that caused was a little bit easier to break because there's not enough meat on the actual material to lighten it up enough to allow the bolts to be threaded in. So with this 24 millimeter spindle, it makes it a lot better because now it's bigger. Now they can bore out a lot more. So if you look at that, that's bored out a lot. So it keeps it almost lighter than a 22. I would say it is lighter than a 22 millimeter. And then also the bolts are being able to be bored out. Just a lot of other cool features. Another thing is what's super cool about this is that they have a mid-sized bearing that can go right into your frame just like all the other ones. But they also have, the size of your actual sprocket, if you don't know this, is without those little hat washers or spacers in there that slide inside your sprocket and slide over the spindle. Those are actually, that hole is actually 24 millimeters. So instead of using those spacers, now you just slide your sprocket right on, and now it's the perfect fit. Now you got rid of the two little spacers that are, or the little gaps in the spacer that makes your sprocket sit to one side. So what that does is it makes that sprocket perfectly circle, because you got to realize when they machine these sprockets, they put it in a jig and it's stationary there, and then the CNC router comes around and it mills it all out, and it'll make it into a perfect circle, but it's based off that center hole. So with that center hole being perfectly in the center and all the teeth being in the center, once you slide it on here, guess what? Your sprocket's now center. Now with your sprocket now center, allows your chain to go on perfectly smooth with no tight loose spots. Yeah, you may get a slight tight loose spot because you're right foot forward or your left foot forward, and every time you're on your left foot forward, it has a little bit of flop. That's why it drives you crazy when you have that other spindle and sprocket setup, is because every time you're rolling normal, that's where you've put the most pressure, that's where you stretched everything out, that's what's causing that chain to be super, super floppy there. If you don't believe me, go check out your bike in the garage right now, go in your backyard, check out your bike, and see what foot forward you have, and put that crank in that position, and I guarantee that that chain will be looser in that spot. And that's because it sucked up that little space. Unless you got a spline drive sprocket or you got a 24 millimeter spindle. So mark my words, go check out your bike if you don't believe me. But with that said, that's kind of cool because now you got rid of that, and now a crank arm could be a little bit bigger, have a little bit more meat, just be a bigger tubing and stuff like that without looking disgusting. So very, very cool on their part by making a 24 millimeter spindle. Got rid of that spacer, allows more to be bored out of here, allows your bolts to be a little bit bigger with more threads on it so that they don't strip out as easy as having a small little bolt. Also too is the head of the actual bolt that you put in here can be a lot larger. So that's very, very cool. And they could even put 2 different sizes on there. So very, very cool that they do that on the spindle. Let's kind of go into the bottom bracket, the bolts and stuff like that, since we're talking about the spindle, and then we'll talk about the crank arms. So like I was saying, now with the crank arm, this one comes with the heat treated chromoly bolts. So this has a lot bigger bolt. It has a lot larger size Allen wrench inside there, so that you can use a metric Allen wrench. Don't use a standard. If it says like 1 1/4 or anything like that with a slash on it, don't use that. That's not designed for this. It's the wrong size. There's 2 different size measurements. The US uses standard, and overseas and pretty much everywhere else in the world use metric, which are millimeters. So you want to use everything millimeters because that's starting to be the norm. A lot of machines, a lot of parts aren't using the standard size. So stop going in your dad's garage, grabbing his tools and grabbing the wrong one and stripping out his tools and then leaving them somewhere. And that's why your dad doesn't let you use the tools anymore, because you don't have responsibility. You leave stuff around. So make sure you grab the right size and you don't use the wrong size and strip out his Allen wrenches or make them round or anything like that. Make sure you use metric. This one here is an 8 millimeter, super, super big. It has a pretty cool laser Primo logo inside of it. It also has some Loctite on the end of it so that these things don't back out once you tighten them down. And remember, you don't want to take these cranks off a lot, so make sure that you either take it to a bike shop that knows what they're doing. Don't take it to their friend that's not going to pay for whatever he damages just because he wants to work on some new cranks and stuff like that. Stay away from those guys. They always want to mess stuff up on your dime. So if you're gonna mess it up, might as well mess it up yourself because you're paying for it. But definitely try not to do it a bunch of times, because the more times you bolt this in, the more Loctite's gonna fall off, the easier that your crank bolts are gonna come out. Don't buy stuff used because you're buying other people's problems. Overall, these bolts are super, super cool. They're a custom bolt. Try not to lose these, because if you go to a bike shop and you are very impatient and you want this bolt and you think that there's a million bolts that are just like this and you can just go to any store and buy it, that's not the case. It's a custom bolt. You need to buy it. It's going to be a little bit more expensive, probably a lot more expensive, because these aren't easy to make. So take care of your stuff. Make sure you look after it, because those are custom. Another thing that I noticed is that it's got 2 sprocket bolts. It's got the original sprocket bolt, which is a 6 millimeter bolt with a coarse thread on here, and it also has Loctite on it. But if you notice that this one is a cone shape, And that's because when you have a small sprocket, then you possibly have American bottom bracket, you can still put these cranks on there without it rubbing on the actual bottom bracket. If you don't believe me, check out an old school bike. You see the bolt come really close to the bottom bracket. Sometimes it even scrapes it and jacks it up, but cool idea, they threw that in there. And this is a heat treated bolt as well, so very, very cool. Now there's another size right here, which people are going, oh, what the heck's that? Now this is a micro drive bolt, and a lot of flatliners use it. Not really too much of the freestyle BMX. It's more of a sprocket that's a 24 tooth or smaller. A lot of us don't use that one, but they want to sell these cranks to flatliners as well. So they create a micro drive bolt on this. So it's a little bit smaller bolt, and it sits a little bit lower. I'll show you that in a few. But this one's heat treated as well. Definitely a custom bolt. You can't just go to the hardware store and buy this. You can't just go to the bolt store and buy one. So don't lose these things. With that said, the bottom bracket, what's cool about these cranks is at the low price that they're already selling them for, which is really close to all the other cranks that are on our website, they sell you a Primo mid-bottom bracket included with the cranks. And the main reason why they do that is because it's very hard to get a 24 millimeter bottom bracket. Most shops don't buy it. Most shops don't sell 24 millimeter crank or spindled cranks, and that's just because those guys don't ride BMX. They don't really care about BMX. They're just trying to mooch off of our culture and just buy whatever so that they can sell it in the corner, maybe locked up in bars or chains or something like that, and not really let you guys get the stuff you really want. So they include that with it. So that's very, very cool because you can pretty much run the 24 millimeter spindle in here, and you can push it right into your mid bottom bracket frame, and it comes with all the tube spacers. A lot of you guys forget these tube spacer, but this goes in between. If you don't have this in between your frame and you tighten down your cranks, it's gonna crush the bearings. That's why your bearings always get jacked up. So remember to put that spacer in there. If it's too long or too wide and stuff like that, that's why you took a professional. They know what they're doing. They shave it down, they add spacers, they make it fit properly. Don't let your buddy do it, and don't leave this spacer out, because what's gonna happen is it's gonna crush your bearings, and it's also gonna make your cranks always come loose. You guys are out there, oh, why is my crank coming loose? Oh, that's because you didn't put the tube spacer in it. You may crank that bolt down, but it has nowhere to go. It keeps backing out, it's got too much play in it. So physics says you need this tube spacer, so always have it in your frame. It's not junk, it's meant to be there. So think about that, that keeps your cranks tight. Another thing is that it's got these pretty cool cone washers in there, and they got the Primo logos laser etched on there. Another little trick I'm going to tell you right now, and a lot of you guys may not believe it, and you might be stubborn as hell, but I'm going to tell you right now, is wheels have changed from back in the day till now. We used to need this little spacer here, and this one here. With these cranks, I'm going to tell you right now, you can probably use this actual spacer. That's because there's no hat washer and there's not an extra couple millimeters thick behind your sprocket. So with this one, when it slides on, you can use this. But on a lot of the other cranks, if it has a hat washer, you don't want to run this. You want to run a little tiny wafer washer in there. That's because the cassettes and freewheels are completely different spacing. A cassette now can slam more into your hub body compared to the old style where they had a thick freewheel where it had to stick out because it threaded onto your actual hub. So that's why they have the spacer to pull your cranks out very far. Now you're allowed to run it in a little bit tighter, and a lot of you guys, I've seen 95% of the kids that come in here, they change their sprocket out, they always run this, and they have a cassette on their bike, and what it does is it throws off the alignment, and it causes the chain to eat up your gear and to make noise. And I see a lot of guys, they dish their wheel wrong because they kick the wheel to try to make their chain straight. You're ruining your wheel. So definitely think about chain alignment when you put this in there. If you want to know a little bit simpler how it's done, make sure you push your wheel all the way in without any chain or anything like that. Make sure it's slammed, and then you're allowed to look down the drivetrain and see if it runs parallel with your sprocket. So little tips and stuff like that, but I'll tell you more about that when we hit 1,000 subscribers. But yeah, after that, let's talk a little bit about the crank arms. So these ones here are the raw ones. We want to show the raw ones because they're pretty cool looking. They look super industrial. But yeah, these are super heavy duty, heat treated chromoly crank, and they got the 24 millimeter spindle right here capability. They also got this micro drive and the regular bolt on one side. Matter of fact, it's got it on both sides. That's so you can run left or right hand drive, chain on the left or chain on the right, but make sure you have a left hand drive wheel or you have a right hand drive wheel, whatever side sprocket you're putting on, and don't make sure that you're not running, if you're not doing that and you have different cranks, actually, if you're doing that, make sure that the right side's on the right side and the left side's on the left side, because if you flip them over, your pedals are going to actually be backwards and your feet are going to slip off a lot easier. You may not believe me, but if you look down on your pedals, the pedals actually slant this way when you're standing on them, but if you have them backwards, they're going to slant this way and your feet's going to fall off a little bit easier. But yeah, pretty cool that they make it left or right hand drive compatible. They have some super heavy duty pedal bosses on here, so if you look at that, super thick and heavy duty. It's welded super clean all the way around. They're heat treated. They got a pretty cool Primo. It's a screen printed right here, Primo logo right there. They have a Churchill logo right there, and then on the inside they have the whole Primo logo and everything stamped right there, and then inside it's stamped right here of what size it is. So if you're wondering what size it is, it's a 175, and this is a left-hand side crank arm. So make sure you put the left hand on the left hand, and make sure you put your left side pedal on the left side, and don't strip it out. If it's super hard to get your pedal onto your crank arm, you're probably putting it in wrong. So put it on the other side, don't get impatient, relax, put some grease on there, and thread it in very slowly. But I guess the cool thing about these cranks is that they come in a bunch of different sizes, from 165 to 180, and they got a square style body, and then it's got its own kind of crazy feature on the crank arm on here. It's flat, but it's not really flat. You can't really see it from the photos, so take my word for it. It actually has like these little, it almost has these two little bumps up, and then it flattens out. It kind of makes like this crazy I-beam effect. So it makes it super strong. And then also too, these things are super light. With that bigger size spindle on there, it allows them to use a bigger tubing of crank arm, and it actually tapers. So this thing's bored out like crazy. It has, I mean, it's pretty thin walled, but just the form of it on both sides, it has an I-beam effect on it, and it creates a lot of strength for it. And if you look in the middle, it kind of tapers into the center and tapers into the center. It just makes it super dope, super heavy duty. It's kind of flat right here, which is really cool, because if you're doing like crank arm grinds and stuff like that, it could sit flat on there and kind of hold your balance and allow you to grind a little bit better. Also too, it's flat here, so that if you're grinding rails and stuff like that, it's missing any of the rail or anything like that, and it's not going to catch up. But I don't know, that's pretty much it. With the Stevie Churchill cranks, I think Primo and Stevie did an awesome job of creating these cranks. They look fabulous. They sell really well in our shop. I definitely recommend this to anybody out there that's looking at cranks. Definitely pick up these cranks if you're looking for a new set of cranks. They're on the really low end part because they come with the bottom bracket. A lot of cranks out there sell them or sell just the crank arms, and then you got to buy the bottom bracket afterwards. But with these cranks, they can solve a lot of your problems that you're dealing with right now, and some problems that you might not even know that you're dealing with, they can solve a lot of those. So good job, Stevie. Good job, Primo. Keep up the good work and keep creating these super dope products. If you want to know where you can buy these cranks at, you can always buy them at our website at stackbmx.com, where we have pretty much everything that you actually want to buy. There's a lot of other shops out there, and they trick you with these little doodads and weird stuff like that, colors and this really generic stuff, and it pretty much sucks. So, we create our site to have the best products out there. That's from just the quality wise to the availability. There's a lot of brands out there that don't make very many products. They pump it up, but you can't get it here in the States. Warranty issues, they don't have any extra stuff to warranty it. They sell out of it really quick, and that's because they make a small batch of it. There could be many different things. Maybe they just don't hold up, or you're spending a lot more money than it's actually worth. I've been doing this for 15, 20 years. I've been going to bike shops. I worked at a bike shop for 10 years, managed a place. I worked at another shop for 9 months. He wasn't really psyched on the BMX products I was buying. Told me put my money where my mouth is. So I'm here now, put my money where my mouth is, started my own shop, and I'm trying to give you guys the best information that I can and create a cool shop that you can buy stuff from without getting burned. So that's the whole idea from our shop. So if you guys support me, I would greatly appreciate it. You can always hit up stackbmx.com, check out all this stuff. We got a bunch of videos on all our products on there. We're gonna continue to keep dropping these and fill up that whole website full of videos. So watch those videos. It gives you a little bit more information that we write in the little description. It's like one of these videos where we go on and tell you all the little ins and outs about cranks or forks or anything like that. So if you're wondering about forks or something about your forks or some different cranks, go on our website, check out some of the videos. If there's a little video that shows me talking about it, watch that video because it can explain a lot of things that a normal guy at a bike shop doesn't want to explain to you or doesn't have the time. So it's almost like your guys' BMX encyclopedia. So definitely check that out. I work really hard to try to bring that to you, and I'm gonna keep making it better every single time that I produce one of these. I'm gonna make it better for you guys. So everything that you guys buy from our shop, I really appreciate it. You guys really hype me up, and you guys help the store go because without you guys buying stuff, I can't pay for the rent. And if you guys are over there shopping at these guys that don't support BMX, don't put on jams like us, don't ride BMX, don't sponsor kids or anything like that, you're kind of putting your money into a bottomless pit that somebody's just going around and buying IKEA stuff with. So that's not going to help BMX. So if you really want to help BMX, you really love it, support Stack, buy from us, and pick up these Stevie Churchill cranks and make sure that you support him because he's out there trying to ride. He's trying to support BMX and bring you guys something cool, and support Primo BMX because they put him on, they're giving him a paycheck. So all the cranks that you buy from him helps him out, helps out Primo, helps the whole program making cool BMX parts. So definitely support anybody that you really, really like, and pay attention to who's really supporting you guys, because the guys that aren't putting on jams, the guys that don't have a BMX team, they're not supporting you. They're just trying to get your money because they got another bike shop and kids are coming in here asking for it. But if you got a local BMX shop in your town, support them. And so you guys support me, so I want to show you a way that I can support you, and we're going to have a lot more stuff coming up. But the number one thing is that we want you to subscribe to our channel. We want you to like this video. We want you to share this video. We want you to turn on your notification bell. So every time we drop a video, you guys get to watch it and you get to enter again. But the main thing is we want you to comment below. Let us know what you're thinking, what products we should review on here more, what you like about our videos, what you don't like about our videos. Tell us something that maybe I haven't thought about. Come up with anything. I answer back to all your guys' comments and stuff like that. And I want to really interact with you guys and try to make this shop better, because there's no shops out here really doing this type of stuff, and that's why I'm here, is to support you guys and give you guys the knowledge that nobody's trying to give you. So that's what I designed this shop for, and it's going to keep growing. I'm going to sponsor more riders. I'm going to build a skate park. I'm going to do a bunch of other stuff, but it takes us all together to do that. So comment below what you like about this stuff and what's just on your mind, and I'll comment back to you, and I don't know, pretty much just do our thing. But I appreciate you guys once again. Thanks for buying all your stuff from Stack BMX Shop. If you want a shout out on Instagram, make sure that you leave your IG tag inside the comments below on the checkout. So where it says your order, and then you gotta put your little address and stuff like that. There's a little box underneath, but put your IG on there and say, hey, give me a shout out. So when we send out your order, we'll tag you on our page and give you a shout out on there. And then when you get your package, DM us your package, either with the parts on your bike or the parts in your house or wherever you're gonna lay them out. Make a cool photo, send it to us, and then we'll repost it on our story and give you a shout out as well. So we want to support you guys just the way you support us. Let people know that you support us and that it's a big community and we're all helping each other. But yeah, thank you guys once again for supporting our shop. Thanks for supporting our IG. You guys really hype me up. Check me out at Can't Stop LA on Instagram. So if you guys want to follow me, know a little bit more about what's going on, what I've done. I've been posting a lot of old school videos that I used to film and edit with all my buddies, and I got a lot of guys sponsored, and you can kind of see what my story is and what I'm about, and it's all about BMX and helping each other grow and just do the most that they can. So thank you very much. I appreciate your support. Have a good day.